The intention to strengthen the US economy might actually backfire, as there will be more of an equal race towards breakthrough technologies. And this will lead to new tension and battles for superior technology and quantum supremacy.
How are recent quantum computing breakthroughs reshaping business, competition, and society itself? What global challenges might quantum and AI either help with or introduce? We're trying something a little different and asking a futurist and best-selling author of the quantum economy to weigh in on how our increasing qubit counts might all play out in a few years. Heck, we even touch on simulation theory before the end. Let's get philosophical in this episode of the Post-Quantum World. I'm your host, Konstantinos Karagiannis. I lead quantum computing services at Protiviti, where we're helping companies prepare for the benefits and threats of this exploding field. I hope you'll join each episode as we explore the technology and business impacts of this post-quantum era. Our guest today is a best-selling author of The Quantum Economy and The Singularity Paradox, among other titles. He bridges philosophy, economics, and technology in unique ways, and is a deep tech investor with a lot to say about what it means to live in a post-quantum world. Anders Indset, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Konstantinos. I'm happy to be with you.
Yeah. I got a chance to look at your different books over the years, and I figured it would be fun to try and tie it all in together into something that listeners can get some real impact from. So let's orient them a little bit. We'll talk a little bit first about how you view the current quantum industry. We've had an exciting few months. Very newsworthy ones. Some of it's hype, some of it isn't. We had Willow, talks of the multiverse. We had Majorana 1 with a new state of matter. We had Ocelot, which took a technology that had been around for a little while and created a chip that can potentially be running soon in Amazon. So how will this quantum economy that's growing redefine, the things we normally think about, like business models, competitive advantages, economic structures in the coming, years?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I think as previous technology hypes and developments have kept surprising us on valuation and growth, probably these companies that you mentioned and the technology will also have some surprises. But if you look at these players, I think the conventional quantum computing stocks are heavily overvalued if you look at the performance matrices of conventional investing, even if you look at the tech companies. But is that an indicator for what will come? We don't know. We simply don't. And I think last month has shown that the big players, namely, as you mentioned, Microsoft and Alphabet, Jensen Huang and NVIDIA, tuning in, trying to cool off the market, more in a way that he wanted to get in on the market himself, it seemed like. NVIDIA is heavily invested in many and have put a clear focus on quantum. And I think, AWS or Amazon with their Ocelot kind of sort of silently snuck into this market with a very promising late communication now, and might have actually also contributed to a very fundamental step forward. And I predict that we will continue to see these quote unquote breakthroughs because you need to hype the market, fuel the market, as there is still not so much revenue in the companies. So you need to have some actual academia papers that are put into some kind of practical application. And that's what we've seen over the past 6 months in particularly. And I think that will continue so. But it's a very interesting time because at the same time, you also see that high-performance computers and AI and the optimization of the algorithms are taking up a lot of the use cases that were set to be the real breakthroughs for quantum. So it's a very exciting time. But I think the fundamental change on how we see the world, how we relate to reality, and the relationship between high-performance computing and hybrid and quantum together with AI will lead to some fundamental changes in how we operate in society, and even how we see what it means to be a human being. And I think that's the more radical change that we are confronted with over the next 5 to 10 years.
So, if you think about the quantum economy, or just the economy right now, chaos is part of the equation, right? I mean, I don't think anyone's exactly thrilled with how goofy things are right now when it comes to tariffs and all
Right.
sorts of other things. So I did want to bridge a geopolitical question kind of early in this talk. Even if quantum wasn't a factor, there's a lot of weirdness going on geopolitically right now between the US, China, Europe, all that stuff. So how would you imagine that quantum and the quantum economy right now that's growing, how would you imagine that affects all of that? Do you think it
Yeah.
has some kind of big impact right now, or is it something still far out?
No, I think what we have seen that China has, technologically speaking, caught up, and they have been heavily investing in future technologies, at least from my viewpoint. So what I mean by future technologies, if you look at what we were stuck in a sustainability and ideology discussion on the future of the world and saving the planet and Greta Thunberg and all of that, which are great initiatives for engagement. But at the end of the day, the challenging tasks for humanity will be solved by having progress in technology. And since the last Trump term, China has detached himself more from the U.S. economy and have heavily invested in renewables, EVs. They are a global market leader, and they are challenging in all markets outside of the U.S., which make them obviously less detached to the U.S. economy, which put them in a better position. And this is something of a long-term strategic development of China that you see in high-performance trains and a lot of these technologies, and that includes quantum. While we have had an educational system of the West that has been superior, that innovations and breakthroughs would come from the West, and we will outsource for lower cost development in the East. What we are definitely seeing now is that not only are we seeing that they catch up, we are also saying that they're taking a lead. And I expect that a lot of the growth in quantum technologies will also come from Asia on a global scale. So I think we're equaling that out. And from my viewpoint, and I might be off on this because there might be some hidden magical plan behind these tariffs. I think that the tariff war, the trade war, is one of the good things that happens for the Chinese economy. Because if you look at Europe now, Europe will look for new partners and alliances and find out ways, even though the value systems and some of the things might differ, you find ways to look at how to operate together in the economy, because the economy is the operating system of our society. And only if that functions, if there's something to divide, and if we can tackle ecology and sustainability within the economy through efficiency, only then will it work out for humanity. So what we are seeing is that even car manufacturers and the whole industry is now leaning more eastwards than to the US, which is something that will then backfire for the intention to strengthen the US economy. So I think a lot of the things that were addressed, that there are challenges, I think they might actually backfire as close alliances of the American economy are looking for new markets and then supporting growth in other regions. So it looks like there will be new alliances. It looks like there will be more of an equal race towards breakthrough technologies, and this will obviously lead to new tension and obviously new battles for superior technology and quantum supremacy. And we could only talk about defense, and we can talk about breakthroughs in science, material design, and all of the things that is a highly economical value that might give birth to trillion-dollar industries, where you could see kind of sort of a winner-takes-all market, and that will be a race. that will be very exciting to watch unfold. And I think we're up for some very, very interesting developments in that field.
So with these new alliances that you're thinking about, there have been moves by the US, for example, to prevent the export of certain technologies, right? If you go back to the cryptographic days, you couldn't export cryptography. Forget it. Like you used to literally have to like print out source code and send it because it was just a printout instead of the actual code, right? So now we're seeing some of that with quantum. We're seeing like, oh, you can't export any technology above whatever qubits, whatever they're trying to impose. And we're seeing some of that with AI too, right? You can't have certain types of machines go overseas. But somehow we still get DeepSeek. Somehow China is still publishing tons of quantum computing papers and being cited at a rate that exceeds, I guess, the US scientists at times. How do you feel then that these new alliances would impact all that? Do you think that this will just build some other kind of quantum coalitions to get to higher performance machines without the US involvement, like overseas?
Well, I think, first of all, US is a powerhouse, and it has given birth to the brightest minds in technology, and you see also that wars and conflicts have been drivers of development, and now investing heavily in defense will again drive breakthroughs in science and technology. The same will apply for drill, baby, drill. So while the emphasis will be on oil and gas and fracking, it will at the same time lead others to drive innovation in other technologies, because at the end of the day, it's about efficiency. And the most efficient, forms of energy is not oil and gas. It might be some kind of fusion or fission, or it obviously is related to just storing and distributing sun, maybe on a more decentralized local way, where you detach yourself from centralized grids and old and economic players that are holding on to the past. And this is, if money is put into a market, and the brightest minds are put together, progress follows. At least that has been the story of the past 80 years. And I think that will follow. So when I wrote The Quantum Economy, and I'm in the midst of rewriting the same book now that I wrote back in 2019, I looked at two things. I looked at what do I think will happen with exponential growth of technology? What are the potentialities, and what is the aspect of humanity? What are we, as actors in the market, as players, what are we likely to do based on our, psychology and sociology and how that? I didn't see wars. I didn't see a pandemic. And back then, many said it was very radical and it was, very bold thesis. In the retrospect, I was conservative, right? So what I do now, I go back and look at how this has unfolded over the past 6 years, and what do I think are the next impacts? And now I look much more at a practical level of these companies. And I think that this is something that we are now starting to realize, that this change, when you mix this technological development together with the slow evolution of humanity, has a potential to radically change how we look at life and living. And this is something that we went, you mentioned the singularity paradox, yep, where we looked at basically what are promising path for an extended organized human life on our planet. And I highly think that the word, sustainability will, increasingly be removed from the terminology, because it will be on efficiency. And this hyper efficiency game is so rapid and so powerful that most of the people on the planet do not see what is ahead of us. And I think this is, maybe if we take this for granted and perceive this as reality and not some part of kind of some simulation or cosmic game, then I think this is the most radical transition in human history that lies ahead of us. And this, I would say, technological tsunami is now in front of us and not behind us, and I don't think a lot of people see the implication of what that might lead to.
Yeah, I have some questions ready for a little bit about singular paradox and this simulation theory stuff, because I do love that kind of thing, and I definitely want to get to it. So we're going to tease listeners and make them hang in there to get some of that.
That's good. Yeah.
So I definitely believe in what the U.S. companies are doing, right? I've been pretty impressed with what I've seen this year. I love that we're about to get 50 logical qubits, that it's a new frontier of computational power that we've never had before. Super excited about that. So as an advisory board member for Terra Quantum, right, you're close to cutting edge research. I mean, I'm sure you see things. What near-term applications of quantum technology do you find most promising for addressing some of the global challenges that you've already
Yeah, sure. No,
mentioned, like
well,
scarcity?
yeah, no. But taking it a little bit back, I also think, if you look at blockchain spec, you look at AI, you look at quantum, obviously big players and leading companies are in the US. So I'm very, optimistic that they will be the global players, but it might be counterintuitive to see where the money is. So if you look at like a company such as Quantinuum, who has the main shareholder Honeywell, which is a company that might be underestimated, right? If you look at quantum computing companies, IonQ, Rigetti, D-Wave, well, yeah, D-Wave a little bit outside of that, but you might also not understand that maybe the substance lies with the or companies that are already there. So if you look at Alphabet, they will obviously be in chip production and in cloud computing and hybrid solution and quantum, be a big player. And their spin-off with Sandbox AQ just again had I think it was a 300-400 million round, is now evaluated as a company that is now all over the media. And it's a company that is not building a quantum computer, but, at the intersection of exactly what you referred to. What are the promising fields? So the same goes for Quantinuum and also Terra Quantum. There are near-term business cases on security. So you mentioned that on the cryptography. So having a post-quantum safe environment where there are actual applications or at least standards that fill the NIST standard of the National Institute of the security standards that has been communicated. So, transiting to a post-quantum safe environment is something that will lead to a lot of value and a business. I think 250,000 companies has been identified as critical infrastructure just in the US. But how do you do that? How do you migrate on a hybrid environment? And here, obviously, it's clear to see that AWS and Amazon will be a big player, even NVIDIA. So maybe these stocks that seems to be today already giants might be the better bets for the future. Companies such as Palantir that are tightly related to the whole defense and the structures of use cases within quantum, data centers. These companies, I think, are very, very promising still, because they will be leaders also when it comes to quantum technologies. I think, the security aspect is very interesting. I think when it comes to hardware, I agree with you. There is promising research, development, and error correction. I think, but still, it is. As you see that high-performance computers and GPUs are becoming more efficient, you push the boundaries for the quantum momentum or the quantum breakthrough further out, because you need more qubits to compete, and they are still seen as special purpose computing. So there are obviously cases to be made that when you could tap into material design and come up with some new elements in the periodic systems, you will figure out ways to do more efficient batteries or new materials. These are very, very promising fields. When it comes to health, you obviously see the benefits of tackling some of the complex diseases, be it cancer or Alzheimer or whatever. When you look at financial portfolio optimization and need stabilizations, quantum computers are very promising. You have the whole field of chemistry. So there is a number of things that you could look at where you have complexity. And I think that these are but no, short term, I think the challenge is that there is a lot of R&D and a lot of projects that are based around consulting companies and coming up with momentum to generate some revenue to fuel the organization, especially when it comes to hardware. Very interestingly, some hardware companies are of the opinion that the only challenge is the engineering, and software and middleware will follow automatically as soon as you tackle that. I think that betting on some of these players that start now to build quantum algorithms and build environments that are agnostic of the hardware, where you could apply and train. I know, as you mentioned, Terra Quantum has a platform, TQ42, where they do just that. You can develop and use and play with it. I think the hybrid approach of outsourcing some parts of challenges to quantum is also on a near term and a midterm promising field. So I also think that a lot of these US companies and also some companies in Europe, one could mention IQM, the hardware company from Finland, who is also promising, has a promising development. I think these companies gives me a lot of hope also for Europe and the US, obviously, and the West. So I don't think it's going to be like a domination game of China. And even you mentioned the DeepSeek moment. Obviously, they had more chips and more money invested than the media headlines said. And yes, of course, they copy and have access to the developments of the West, but it just pushes us to invest more in bright minds, getting good people together, allocating capital. And what probably will happen is that it will be a different ball game, where a lot of the breakthroughs from academia will be now coming out of corporate environments and corporate development. So don't expect the Nobel lecturers of chemistry and physics to be coming out of the ivory towers, more so out of corporate environments where the brightest minds are given the same money and a playground where they don't have to follow the old rules of academia, but they kind of sort of do open heart surgeries in a live environment and can do some cool stuff. So I think it's a very promising time for breakthroughs in innovation and progress in science in general. And as I said in the beginning, we're up for surprises.
So companies should be investing in a wide range of these technologies, it sounds like, right? You're into them moving into algorithms that can run across platforms. And also, I guess you're a big fan of AI and HPC kind of still picking up some of the slack on some of these dream use cases and doing some of the work. I mean, I feel personally that one day everyone's going to just not care what's running, right, on the cloud. You're going to have a workload, you're going to go on the cloud, and you're just ultimately one day, you're not going to care if it's a GPU or a QPU or whatever running it, which is depressing to me because I'm obviously rah quantum, but I think one day that's kind of how it's all going to like blend together.
Yeah, and I think we will not get it. I mean, we see it today also with. It's kind of sort of. We had a breakthrough moment. We learned about LLM, but now kind of sort of LLMs are boring. There is some limitation to it. We are looking for new approaches, and it's just so fast. And how things work and how things operate when it comes to coding and stuff like that, it's about the practical implications and where it's then driven and what kind of processing power and what takes care of the issue. It's just about having a problem, having a clear identification of the problem, and making progress to that problem as efficient as possible. And if you can provide that as a service, then you can also send out an invoice, then you have some value. And that's the art of doing business. It's about creating better problems in the most efficient way, and regardless of the underlying technology and structures.
Yeah, and I would like to pick your brain a little bit about your thoughts on this simulation theory that everyone talks about eventually, whether it has to do with quantum or not. Typically, you'll hear that just an advanced species would be so bored one day with all their computational power that, of course, they're going to have a simulation. And there's a pretty good chance that if we survive long enough, we might be building such a thing, which means that the we that we're talking about now are living in one ourselves. So that kind of like recursive nightmare. Do you believe that there's any way to gain any kind of experimental evidence to test whether we're in a simulation? This seems to like kind of stump folks, and I could see why.
Yeah, I mean, so we wrote a book that was published January 2025 in Davos, Florian Neuker and I, titled Ex Machina, The God Experiment. And it stems out of a quintessential bar in Vienna. I think it was back in 2023, where I sat down with 12 quantum physicists, some leaning more towards the Copenhagen interpretation, while others were tapping with the multi-world interpretation and having, fundamentally different views on how to look at quantum physics. And I asked them, I said, can you prove to me, by applying math or quantum physics, that we do not live in a simulation? Right? And my co-author Florian called me 4 months later and said, Anders, I haven't literally slept in 4 months. This is
he's lying for sure.
He was obviously exaggerating, or he has just tapped out of the simulation. But he couldn't wrap his mind around it. And so we started to do observations on the simulation hypothesis. And as you correctly said that, there is one scenario outlined in the simulation theory, in the hypothesis of Nick Bostrom back in 2003. One says that if, and out of these three scenarios, one holds to be true. And the first one is there is some kind of extinct moment that humanity goes extinct before we reach a simulation. The second one says that there is a point where we get bored out of making progress. So you could envision some kind of higher dimension of a non-defined consciousness where we just sit in awe or have some kind of spiritual practice that we just, we don't need more technology. Both of these two scenarios seems not very likely. And if I put a likelihood to it, it'd be lower than the third argument, which is there is potential for progress. And if there is potential for progress, coming back to one of my absolute favorites of all time, with The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch, who argues that there's an infinite potential for progress, and this is why we're here, basically to build better problems, right? Then the argument follows that eventually we'll be able to simulate at least our visible universe, and the atoms in our universe are, with a strong quantum computing, as theory shows, possible to simulate. The challenge then appears if 8 billion people simulates, and there is a simulation within the simulation ad infinitum, and the base computer obeys the same physical laws as every simulated computer, and there is no external intervention by a god or whatever, or programmer, then the computer will eventually come to a halt because of the entropy in the universe. And that is basically the only argument against. But if we were able to simulate a universe, then the likelihood of us being in the simulation is obviously, statistically speaking, much higher than that we are, part of base reality, and we are, the lucky ones that come to build this first simulation. So therefore, mathematically speaking, and from that argument, one could easily argue that there is a high likelihood to be in a simulation, something that Neil deGrasse Tyson and David Chalmers and Elon Musk have all been outspoken about. If you walk and live as if it was a simulation, one could easily argue that there are glitches and things that seem strange. Once you are aware of it or open to it, why not? I like the German word of Lebendigkeit, the liveliness of life itself, the beautiful experience of my experience, and that seems so real that I have a very hard time to see it as something virtual or digital, because the perception of the experience, regardless of how it is and how real it is when I, talk to you through a computer, it seems so real that no one can take that away from me. And that is something that is, you could romanticize and call it magical. But it's something that I don't, walk around every day and behave and act as if I were in a simulation, nor do I uh, take reality as it is, as I perceive it, as I know that I'm just have a very limited perception of actual what could be an actual based reality. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing to play with. And once you go down that rabbit hole, it's hard to get back out.
Yeah, I don't think about it too often, but when I do, I just summarize it like this in my head. If this is a simulation, try and be as interesting as possible. So the ones running it keep you around and
Well,
maybe pull you out in the end. Who knows? Bring you up to base reality. You know.
All right, so you're serving some higher good. That's a way that's a sneaky way to get God into the picture. Yeah, I take that, but I think I always say that if this is a simulation, I like my simulation. I'm very happy with the simulation that I was granted. It could be so much worse if you perceive things around you. So I think, hang on to it as long as you can, get you extended. Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. And it's also a good way to sneak in some higher purpose. And that's, I like that.
So to try and tie this back into some quantum technology, I know you write about this idea of superhuman intelligence coming, right? And one of the number one kind of thrown around topics is AI meets quantum. It's mentioned in numerous ways, and usually there's nothing backing it. It's just this concept that, well, quantum's faster or better or whatever term the person uses. So AI meets that is faster or better or whatever, more efficient. Of course, we have quantum machine learning, which solves specific problems. We have this idea of using training data that's optimized somehow, and quantum computers in some kind of symbiotic relationship with something like an LLM. How do you feel all this comes to pass? Do you think that this race towards superhuman intelligence is going to be somehow fueled by quantum technology? Is there something in particular there that you're interested in that space?
I mean, I think it extends our imagination, but I think leaning towards a very simple argument. If you put optimized AI models on new foundational models, world models mapped together, and you pair that with additional computing power. Quantum plus AI is AI on steroids, like these type of analogies. There is something to that, but I don't think my reflection on this is that we don't need a quantum computer to build some kind of superhuman intelligence. I think that's much nearer more, and I don't think we need that computational power. I think the scaling of high performance computing as it is, it's an energy topic that once we get to that level, and we seem to be moving very rapidly. If you look at the progress over the last weeks and months, and if you project that into the future, what more is there to cover in the language field? I think, as I said before, LLMs are getting a bit boring because it requires a lot of human understanding to take out the hallucination and to optimize and prompt correctly. But once we found out to stabilize and have these agents and have various use cases and have world models and maybe have a fundamental different way to build it from scratch up. That's something that could come out of China or something that many are looking into today, with various interesting approaches how to also imitate how the human mind and the brain operates with new models. I think we don't need a quantum computer to come to that level of intelligence that AI starts to train AI and models start to train models, and then it's just scaling within the current computation. And
Hmm.
then we have quote unquote super intelligence or some artificial general intelligence. And since we cannot agree really on a technical level on what the term means, it obviously becomes very subjective to what one could put this in. I mean, there are many things that the current models cannot do. If you look at Grok or Anthropic or Perplexity or obviously GPT and all of these, but I don't think that any human being has this, the knowledge base and the competence anyway. So we are already beyond a lot of the skills of a human being. Once we optimize and take out the challenges and we find new ways to build this, it feels like there is some kind of super intelligence. And I think in that case, the genie is out of the bottle and we are racing towards a collective super intelligence way beyond any human being, and maybe, in near future also beyond humanity at large, at whole. And do we need a quantum computer for that? It doesn't seem like it. So, but
Yeah, I
still,
agree.
once we have this computational power, on the complexity level, things that might have been almost impossible with conventional computing can then come out of it. And I think, AI research, will be done by AI models and researchers that are computers and not human beings. And that will obviously fuel innovation like never before.
Yeah, I think you only need one thing to reach superhuman intelligence. You need the ability for an AI researcher to be an AI that has the ability to make a slightly better AI and
Yep.
just repeat.
Yeah, I mean,
In
yeah,
a few hours, they can
yeah,
go millions of years
obviously.
into the future,
Yeah. No, but I think, so there are two scenarios here. I mean, one, if we stay detached from that development, then obviously we will not understand it. So a very
Hmm.
simple, dumb example here is AlphaZero, the chess computer of Google that was put to the test. And now every young chess player plays more like a computer because they have been trained on AlphaZero and not on conventional chess theory. And Magnus Carlsen, the then still number one in chess in the world, he played at the World Championship. And he had studied every game. He was obviously the Mozart of chess and had everything going for him. But he was one of the early adopters of the computers. So when you look at the game Go, Lee Sedol, he quit because he had a superior entity that he could never beat again. This has been true for chess also for many years, but still today chess is more popular than ever. So we like that fail-tastic way of human beings interacting. So there is an observer and some realization on progress. And what Magnus Carlsen did was that he played in the midst of the world champion. He played a pawn move on the H line, and that was a losing move according to conventional theory and Stockfish, the supercomputer. And everyone was like, what did Magnus do? It was a big mistake. And 8 moves down the road, he had an advantage and he won the world championship. And he was asked, Magnus, what was that move? And he said, it's something I picked up from AlphaZero. It was a Google move. So yeah, and what is it? What kind of theory? I have no idea. I just know that it wins. So that was basically the analogy, and no engineer can understand how Google AlphaZero came to that conclusion because it played 4 million games against itself and came up with that itself. So this is, you can look at the code and try to figure it out. But, the CEO of any AI company today, do they really have the power and the understanding of the product that they're, marketing and selling? I highly doubt that. And
The
I think
explainability problem,
yeah.
really, like what's
So,
going on.
and therefore, I think when we take the human out of the loop, we have no idea about the consequences, obviously.
So it sounds like to kind of wrap this up, that there are a few technologies you think in the short term investment will shift to, and this economic impact we discussed. Post-quantum cryptography is obviously one of them. It's something everyone has to do. There's a lot of companies that are going to have to do that and spend there. If companies wanted to like prioritize where to spend, so it would be post-quantum cryptography, and maybe what two other things would they want to look at if they want to make sure they don't completely miss the quantum investment?
Yeah, I think on the quantum computation, the hardware part is very hard to make prediction. They're already high valued, but if there's a winner amongst them, there is a low valuation. So that's high risk investment, I would say. Okay. If you look at IonQ, Rigetti, D-Wave, any of those, it's just high potential upside, but also high risk. I think if you want to play it more safe, I think companies, as I mentioned, Honeywell, AWS, Amazon, seems to be companies that are going to be very strong players also in quantum technologies to me. Because Quantinuum is very far ahead on the software middleware part, and AWS seems to be doing really good work in error correction. So these are like things that are more safe. I mentioned NVIDIA, obviously also Alphabet, but then I think, if one is interested, there are spin-offs and ideas, companies that will be bought, exited, talent acquisition, mergers that have high short-term economic gains. I think there is a lot of money to be made with startups and spin-offs and from universities and also corporate labs where one can get in on an early ticket and mix it up a little bit. And if one understands these, so where there is talent, where there's a lot of publication, these are companies that probably will not go out of business. They might be acquired, and then there is a good upside. So if one can get in on those non-public traded companies, there is, I think, a lot of music in the quantum space. There's a prediction on the growth in the market by Boston Consulting Group. Looking at the lines, I think is $700-800 billion. There are, potential birth of trillion-dollar industries where these players will have a significant impact. So I think the market as such has great potential. Is it in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? I don't know. But in the short term, I would bet on the big tech companies and I would look for startups.
Especially because they're not just doing quantum, right? They're doing a bunch of things. So
and that makes them more safe. And when they also, they have the talent, they have they know how to get their minds around it. They have the environment, they acquire the best people, and that is obviously they have the cash also to think long term about this. Microsoft, Google, AWS, they're in it on the long term. They can sit it out for 10 years, 15, 20 years if it has to be. And that makes them superior to a lot of startups.
Yeah, that's a very valid point you just made there. So Anders, thank you so much for joining me. It was fun to just explore all these different avenues with you. Good luck with the new book. And I'm curious to see what you do with that rewrite of the quantum economy coming out.
Yeah, sure, Konstantinos. Happy to come back and talk to you. And and the singularity paradox, we didn't even talk about it, but I think that's something that is also a very big part of just to wrap it up with an artificial human intelligence, where I also see a lot in that biotech sphere where we start to enhance. And our argument in that book is basically to say that we start with the human, the mensch, at the beginning, and not as a machine, and we hack biology and chemistry, and we develop an artificial human intelligence as the comparisons to the externalized approach. And this is the book that we have now just published, Bridging the Gap Between Humanity and AI. So we're excited about that, and happy to be back and talk about the quantum economy also in the future. Thank you for having me on.
That does it for this episode. Thanks to Anders Indset for joining to discuss his books. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to Protiviti's The Post-Quantum World and maybe leave a review to help others find us. Be sure to follow me on all socials at Constant Hacker. That's Constant with a K, Hacker. You'll find links there to what we're doing in quantum computing services at Protiviti. You can also DM me questions or suggestions for what you'd like to hear on the show. For more information on our quantum services, check out Protiviti.com or follow Protiviti Tech on X and LinkedIn. Until next time. be kind, and stay quantum curious.